My son chose his wife's birthday party over his own mother's funeral. The next day, he called me, not to offer condolences, but to demand $15,000. He thought he was calling his personal ATM, the family bank that never closed. He had no idea he was actually calling the man who was about to systematically and legally dismantle his entire life. He had made his choice. Now, I was about to make mine. But before we get into the details of that call and the fallout that ripped our family apart, I want to take a moment to welcome you. Thank you for being here. I'd love to know where you're listening from today, maybe what city or even what country, and what time it is for you right now. It helps me feel less alone in telling this difficult story. Now, let me take you back to that Tuesday morning. The silence in our Charleston house was a physical thing. It pressed in on me, filling the spaces where my wife Eleanor's laughter used to be. For 40 years, this kitchen had been the warm, beating heart of our home. Now it felt like a mausoleum. I stood there, the granite countertop cold beneath my trembling hands, staring at my phone. My fingers hovered over the screen, over the contact photo of my only son, Leo. He was smiling, standing next to his wife, Brenda. It was a picture I'd once loved. Now it made my stomach turn. My black tie felt like a noose, and I'd already adjusted it 3 times. On the counter, Eleanor's empty coffee mug still sat where she'd left it yesterday morning. A faint, pale pink ring from her lipstick stained the ceramic rim. It was a ghost of her presence, a tiny detail in a world that suddenly felt hollow without her humming, or the scent of the gardenia she loved wafting in from the yard. I finally took a shaky breath and dialed his number. 4 rings echoed in the cavernous quiet of the house. Then, a sleepy, irritated voice. "Yeah, Dad?" I straightened my shoulders, trying to inject some strength into my voice. "Leo?" "The funeral starts at 11:30. A blast of loud music erupted through the receiver, followed by a peal of laughter in the background. I could hear Brenda's sharp voice shouting something about decorations. Leo sighed, a sound of pure annoyance. "Dad, I already told you yesterday. It's Brenda's birthday tonight. We've been planning this for months." The words hit me like a bucket of ice water. Months. They had been planning a party for months, while I had been watching my wife fade away for months. While Eleanor had been fighting for her life, they were picking out caterers and playlists. My hand tightened on the phone until my knuckles were white. I said, my voice dangerously quiet, "Leo, it's your mother's funeral. That only happens once in a lifetime." There was a pause. I heard him cover the phone, a muffled exchange with Brenda, and then he was back. His tone, defensive. "Look, Dad, Mom, she's not coming back. But Brenda's birthday only happens once a year. We have the band setting up. The catering is from that new downtown steakhouse. She'd be devastated." He kept talking, but his voice became a meaningless buzz in my ear. He was listing expenses, party details, as if that could possibly justify this ultimate act of disrespect. He was desecrating his mother's memory with every word. He finished with the line that I will carry with me to my grave. "Mom raised me for 35 years, and I appreciate it. I really do. But I can't just abandon Brenda on her special day. You get that, right?" He didn't wait for an answer. The line went dead. I stood there, motionless, for exactly 3 minutes. I stared at Eleanor's reading glasses, resting by the phone on the hall table. The grandfather clock in the living room chimed 8:47 a.m. The world outside my window, the world Eleanor and I had built, was still moving, but mine had stopped. The plain gold wedding band on my finger, the one she'd placed there 40 years ago, glinted in the morning light. On the counter, I saw the funeral program. There it was, in neat print. Pallbearers. And under it, his name. Leo Foster. I picked up a heavy black pen. With 3 firm, angry strokes, I scratched his name out until the paper nearly tore. What I didn't realize then was that I wasn't just scratching his name off a piece of paper. I was scratching him out of my life. And this was only the first cut. The funeral was a blur of sympathetic faces and hushed condolences. 23 people showed up to honor my wife of 40 years. His son was not one of them. The empty space in the pew where Leo should have been felt like a physical wound, a gaping hole in the fabric of our family. Eleanor's sister, Patricia, kept yuking around, her eyes searching for her nephew. "Where's Leo, Arthur?" she whispered, her voice laced with confusion. I couldn't bring myself to tell her the truth. Not there, not on that day. "Important commitments," I mumbled. The lie tasted like ash in my mouth. Mrs. Henderson, our neighbor and Eleanor's closest friend from her gardening club, patted my arm. "She was so proud of that boy," she murmured, "always talking about his accomplishments." A lump formed in my throat. I just nodded. She was right. Eleanor had defended Leo until her very last breath. When he missed her chemotherapy appointments, she'd say, "Oh, he's so busy with his new life, Arthur. Young couples need their space." She made excuses for him his entire life. When I returned to the house, the silence I'd left a few hours ago had deepened, become heavier. It was a suffocating blanket of memories and what-ifs. I walked through the rooms, touching the things she had loved, her worn leather armchair, the floral curtains she always said clashed with my boring taste. On her bedside table, I found her Bible, filled with markers on her favorite psalms. As I picked it up, a small, handwritten note fluttered out from between the pages. It was Eleanor's careful, looping script. "My dearest Arthur, please don't let Leo forget us. We gave him everything we had. I just hope it was enough. All my love, E." My hands were shaking so hard I could barely read the words. It was as if she knew. Somehow she knew this day would come. Driven by a desperate need to understand, I went to her closet. In the back, tucked away in a box she'd labeled Memories, I found it. It wasn't just a box of memories. It was an archive of sacrifice. Leo's report cards from kindergarten to college, each one with a little note from Eleanor, "So proud," or "Our brilliant boy." The photos from his graduation were the hardest to look at. Leo beaming in his cap and gown, a degree paid for by Eleanor's extra shifts at the hospital and my weekend construction jobs. His proud smile never once acknowledged the cost behind it. But beneath the photos, I found something else. A small, secret ledger. A diary of sorts. Eleanor's handwriting documented every single financial sacrifice. October 12th, canceled our anniversary dinner. Leo needed $5,000 to fix his car. April 3rd, postponed my doctor visit. Leo's wedding costs were higher than expected. July 20th, bought generic groceries this month, sent money for Brenda's birthday. Page after page. It was a chronicle of their entitlement and our endless giving. My grief began to curdle, solidifying into a cold, hard anger. This wasn't just disrespect. This was a long-term pattern of exploitation. I went to my desk, pulled out my calculator, and started adding it up. The down payment on their house, $350,000. Their lavish wedding, $75,000. The MBA from Duke he insisted on getting but never used, another $48,000. Emergency loans for vacations to Europe, bailouts for Brenda's shopping sprees, seed money for failed business ventures he'd abandoned after a few months. The numbers on the calculator screen kept climbing higher and higher. The final total stared back at me, a digital monument to our foolish love. For 15 years, it was nearly $1 million. $1 million of our life, our work, our future, handed over with love and hope. $1 million they had taken for granted. As I stared at that number, a lifetime of excuses for my son evaporated. The fog of parental love cleared, and I saw him for what he was. My phone rang, shattering the silence. The screen glowed with his name, Leo, and what he said next would seal his fate forever. I let it ring 4 times, each chime a hammer blow against my resolve. I took a deep, steadying breath, picturing Eleanor's gentle face, then her secret ledger. I answered, my voice deliberately flat. Hello, Leo. Hey, Dad. Hope you're doing okay after, yesterday. His voice was bright, chipper, the same upbeat tone he always used right before he needed something. It was a performance, and for the first time, I wasn't the captive audience. He didn't mention the funeral. He didn't ask how I was coping with the loss of my wife. It was as if the most devastating day of my life was a minor inconvenience he had to acknowledge before getting to the real point of his call. "I'm managing," I said, my eyes fixed on the financial documents spread across my desk. "Good, good," he said quickly. "Listen, the reason I'm calling is, well, we had a few unexpected expenses come up. Brenda's party was incredible, a huge hit, but things got a little out of hand." I could hear Brenda in the background, her voice sharp and demanding. "Tell him about the diamond bracelet. Tell him everyone loved the raw bar." He chuckled nervously. "Yeah, so we ended up upgrading the bar, and I got Brenda this gorgeous diamond bracelet she's been wanting. She deserves the best, you know? Anyway, the credit card bills are starting to roll in, and we're looking at about, well, it's about $15,000 that needs to be paid off pretty quick." $15,000? I did the math in my head. This would be emergency loan number, what was it now, 47? 48? I'd lost count. Yesterday, I buried my wife. Today, my son wanted money to pay for a party he chose over her funeral. "So," he continued, his voice oozing confidence, "if you could just wire that over today, that'd be great. Brenda's getting really stressed about the bills, and you know how she gets when she's worried." A long, heavy silence stretched between us. I looked at the framed photo of Eleanor on my desk. I looked at the neat columns in her ledger, a testament to the true cost of raising Leo. I looked at the nearly $1 million total on my calculator. And I said the word that would change everything. No. The silence on the other end of the line was different this time. It wasn't expectant, it was shocked. "What? What do you mean, no?" he stammered. "Is there a problem with the bank or something?" "I mean, no, Leo," I clarified, my voice as hard as steel. "I am not giving you any more money." The cheerful mask fell from his voice completely, replaced by a cold disbelief. "You're serious? You're actually saying no to me right now after everything we've been through this week?" Everything we've been through. As if he'd been the one at the cemetery watching the casket being lowered into the ground. "You're 35 years old, Leo," I said simply. "What does that have to do with anything?" he shot back, his voice rising. "This is what family does. We help each other out. It's not like you can't afford it." I could hear Brenda shrieking in the background now. "What is he saying? Tell him we need that money. We already spent it." The casual practice manipulation was sickening. How many times had he used that line? How many times had Eleanor and I caved because he invoked the sacred bond of family? "Your mother," I said, my voice dangerously calm, "would have wanted you at her funeral." I heard his sharp intake of breath. "Fine," he hissed. "Be that way. We'll figure it out ourselves. We'll go deeper into debt, borrow from Brenda's parents, whatever. But don't expect us to come around much anymore if you're going to act like this." There it was, the threat he'd always used. His presence as a reward for my money, his absence as a punishment for my refusal. For 35 years, it had worked. "I understand," I said quietly. "What?" He was thrown off balance. "You understand? That's it?" "Yes, I understand perfectly. Take care of yourself, Leo." I hung up before he could respond. The phone felt strangely light in my hand. I had ended a conversation with my son on my terms. That night, I didn't sleep. Instead, I opened my laptop and pulled up Leo's employee file at my construction company. The first no was just a warning shot. The real war was about to begin. I thought I would be the one to make the next move. I thought I had control of the timeline. I was wrong. Brenda was faster and far more vicious than I had anticipated. The next morning, before the sun had even fully risen over Charleston, my phone buzzed with a call from my sister-in-law, Patricia. Her voice was frantic. "Arthur, have you seen Facebook?" "Patricia, you know I don't go on that thing," I said, my mind still groggy with the sleepless night. "You need to, right now. It's Brenda." With a sense of dread, I opened the app on my computer. And there it was. A post from Brenda, made late last night. It featured a photo of me from the funeral, a candid shot where I looked exhausted, broken, and old. My shoulders were slumped, my face etched with grief. It was a private moment she had captured and twisted into a public weapon. The caption was a masterpiece of passive-aggressive poison. "My heart is simply breaking for my dear father-in-law, Arthur. The tragic loss of his beloved Eleanor has, understandably, taken a terrible toll on his mental health. He's not himself. In his grief, he's become confused and angry, and last night he said some truly awful things to my husband Leo and refused our family the support we desperately need. We are so worried about him. Please, everyone, keep Arthur in your prayers. Pray that he finds peace and clarity in this difficult time. We are trying to be patient, but it's so hard to see him like this." The comment section was a sea of saccharine sympathy for her. "Brenda, you are such a strong, wonderful daughter-in-law to be so patient with him." Oh, that poor man. Grief can make people do terrible things. Sending love and light to you and Leo. You're handling this with such grace. Grace. They called this grace. It was a calculated assassination of my character. Within the hour, the phone started ringing. An old business associate called. "Just checking in, Arthur. Heard you were going through a tough time." A member of our country club's board left a message. "Arthur, hope you're holding up. Let us know if you need anything." They weren't calling to offer condolences for Eleanor anymore. They were calling to check on the unstable old widower Brenda had created. She was trying to build a narrative that would discredit anything I might say or do against them. She was poisoning the well, turning my own community against me before I had even spoken a word of my truth. I stared at the screen at my own grieving face being used as a prop in her sick little play. The cold resolve I'd felt the night before hardened into something unbreakable. She thought she was smart. She thought she had me cornered. But she had just made the biggest mistake of her life. She had just handed me the perfect justification to stop holding back. She wanted to play dirty. I built my entire company from mud, sweat, and concrete. I would show her what dirty really looked like. And folks, this is the point where I have to ask you. If you were in my shoes and your own family was trying to paint you as crazy to the entire world just to cover up their own greed, what would you do? Let me know your honest thoughts in the comments. I truly want to know. The next morning, I walked into the lobby of Foster & Sons Construction with a purpose I hadn't felt in years. A few employees gave me hesitant, pitying looks. No doubt they had seen Brenda's disgusting post. They saw a grieving old man. They had no idea they were looking at a general preparing for battle. On the wall of executives, a framed photo of Leo hung, smiling confidently in a suit I'd bought for him. I had always seen promise in that photo. Today, I saw only arrogance. In my office, I bypassed my usual morning routine. Instead, I called Sarah, my head of human resources, a sharp, no-nonsense woman who had been with me for 20 years. "Sarah," I said as she closed the door behind her, "bring me Leo's complete personnel file and the company's performance review policies." She returned minutes later, her expression unreadable, as she placed the thick folder on my mahogany desk. "Is everything all right, Arthur?" "Everything is about to be," I said, opening the file. It was even worse than I remembered. For 8 years, I had let my love for him blind me to the reality of his professional conduct. I had been making excuses for him to myself and to my senior managers. He's still learning, he's young, he'll grow into the role. But the file told the unvarnished truth, missed deadlines that cost the company thousands. inflated expense reports from client lunches that were clearly just lavish meals with Brenda, 2 major contractor complaints about his dismissive attitude, and a key client relationship damaged because he'd left a job site early to go golfing. It was a pattern of professional negligence and entitlement that would have gotten any other employee fired years ago. I had been a fool, and my loyalty had become a liability to the company Eleanor and I had sacrificed so much to build. "Sarah," I said, closing the folder with a decisive thud. "Prepare a severance agreement and termination paperwork. Standard procedure for a management-level dismissal, effective immediately." For the first time, I saw a flicker of surprise on her face, but it was quickly replaced by professional resolve. "Of course, Arthur. Will you need security present?" "Yes, standard protocol." Leo strolled in at 9:15 a.m., 15 minutes late, holding a ridiculously expensive coffee and laughing with the receptionist. He was completely oblivious, cocooned in his own self-importance. He saw the light on in my office and popped his head in. "Morning, Dad. Big day?" I pressed the intercom button on my desk phone. My voice echoed through the office, cold and unfamiliar. "Leo, in my office, now." The casual swagger left his posture. He'd heard the shift in my tone. He walked in slowly and stopped dead when he saw Sarah standing by my desk holding a clipboard. "Whoa," he said, trying for a joke. "What's all this? Am I in trouble?" I didn't stand up. I didn't smile. I looked him dead in the eye. "Leo Foster," I said, using the formal language of a CEO, not a father. "Your employment with Foster & Sons Construction is terminated, effective immediately." He let out a short, forced laugh. "Okay, very funny, Dad. Seriously, what's this about? Is this because of the money thing yesterday?" I slid the termination documents across the polished surface of my desk. "This is your severance package. Please review and sign where indicated." The color drained from his face as his eyes scanned the legal language. Termination for cause, negligence, breach of professional conduct. The reality of the situation crashed down on him. "You can't be serious," he whispered, his voice trembling. "This is our family business." "This is my business," I corrected him, my voice like ice. "And this decision is based solely on your job performance. Your position has been eliminated as part of a corporate restructuring." He started to bluster, to plead, to argue. He brought up his mother again. "Mom would never want this. You know she wouldn't." I didn't flinch. I simply pressed the button on my desk phone that silently alerted security. My head of security, Mickey, a big man with a gentle face but a firm demeanor, appeared in the doorway. The sight of Mickey seemed to finally break him. The fight went out of his eyes, replaced by a dawning horror and humiliation. He was being fired, and he was being escorted out like a common thief. "Dad, please," he begged, his voice cracking as Mickey gently guided him toward the door. As they walked down the hall, I could see the other employees staring, their faces a mixture of shock and, in some cases, quiet understanding. They had all worked with him. They knew. From my office window, I watched him dump his pathetic box of personal belongings into the trunk of his car. He stood there for a long moment, his shoulders shaking. Then he looked up, straight at my window. I didn't wave. I didn't smile. I simply turned away. I had thought that firing him would be the most dramatic event of the day. I was wrong. Less than an hour later, the calm of my office was shattered. Without knocking, my door flew open with such force that it slammed against the wall. Brenda stood there, breathing heavily, her perfectly styled hair slightly disheveled, her face a mask of furious indignation. "How dare you!" she shrieked, pointing a long manicured finger at me. Her voice filled the large office, sharp and piercing. "How dare you humiliate my husband like this?" I remained seated behind my large oak desk, my hands calmly folded. I had been expecting this. I looked past her, at my son. "Leo, this is a private place of business. Your wife needs to leave." "Megan, please."
Leo mumbled, trying to put a hand on her arm.
She shook him off, her eyes blazing with a rage that was almost theatrical. No! He needs to hear this! We have bills to pay. We have a lifestyle to maintain. You can't just cut him off. This family business belongs to him, too. This is a privately held corporation, I stated, my voice even and low, and you are trespassing. Leave now or I will have you removed. My calmness only seemed to fuel her fury. We deserve a severance package, a real one, 6 months' salary at least. Leo has given 8 years of his life to this miserable company. You owe us. Her attack suddenly turned personal, her words dripping with calculated venom. Eleanor would be so ashamed of you. Look at you, a bitter old man taking out your grief on your only son. You're having some kind of breakdown. That's what this is. Everyone can see it. Leo's face went white. Brenda, don't say that. I clenched my jaw, but I held her gaze. This was the real her. The mask of the concerned daughter-in-law from Facebook was gone, replaced by this shrieking, entitled harpy. It was exactly the reaction I had anticipated. This was textbook manipulation, disguised as moral outrage. Leo finally found his voice, stepping between us. Dad, look, I know I messed up with the funeral. I'm sorry, okay? I am truly sorry, but ruining my career isn't going to bring Mom back. Think about what this means for our family, for your future grandchildren. The mention of future grandchildren, another tool of manipulation, hung in the air. I looked at the man standing before me, a man who shared my DNA but none of my values. What family? I thought. Brenda, seeing that emotional appeals weren't working, switched to financial threats. Fine, we'll sue you. We'll sue you for our share of Eleanor's inheritance. Leo is entitled to half of everything. We know about the life insurance policy. Eleanor left everything to me, I said. The simple, brutal truth landed like a punch, momentarily deflating her tirade. That's impossible, she sputtered. We're getting a lawyer. You'll be hearing from our lawyer. Her voice was rising to a dangerous, hysterical pitch. I pressed the security button again. This time, Mickey returned with another guard, their large frames filling the doorway. Several employees were now gathered in the hallway, drawn by the commotion. I'm not leaving, Brenda screamed as the security guards approached her. This is theft. This is elder abuse. He's mentally incompetent. Her resistance was loud, but futile. The entire office floor listened as her threats and accusations echoed down the hall while she was escorted, still struggling, out of the building. The humiliation for Leo was complete as he watched his wife being physically removed from his former workplace. After the noise faded, Leo stood alone in my office, a broken man. He made one last desperate attempt at emotional blackmail, his voice a pathetic whisper. You're all the family you have left. Those words meant to shatter me. Instead, they clarified everything. I looked at him, really looked at him, and I saw a stranger who had been wearing my son's face for 35 years. No, Leo, I said, my voice devoid of all emotion. You are just someone who used to be my son. I watched his face crumble. For a fleeting instant, I saw the little boy who used to run into my arms when I came home from work. Then the moment vanished, and only the entitled stranger remained. He turned and walked out of my office without another word. The hard part, I thought, was over, but what I was about to do next would be far more permanent. The afternoon sun slanted through the tall, floor-to-ceiling windows of David Chen's corner office, casting long shadows across downtown Charleston skyline. His law firm, Chen & Associates, occupied the top floor of the city's tallest building, a place of quiet power and serious money. David had been my lawyer for over 20 years, but he was more than that. He was a friend.
He had drafted the articles of incorporation for my company, handled our estate planning, and sat with Eleanor and I on our porch drinking iced tea on warm summer evenings. He greeted me with a look of sincere concern. "Arthur, I was so sorry to hear about Eleanor. The service was beautiful. How are you holding up?" I waved off his offer of coffee and sat in the plush leather chair across from his massive mahogany desk. I got straight to the point. "David, I need to make some changes to my estate plan." He nodded, his expression shifting from that of a friend to that of a lawyer. "Of course, updating beneficiaries after a spouse's passing is standard procedure. We'll just need to—" I cut him off, opening my briefcase and pulling out a folder of documents. "I'm not updating beneficiaries, I'm removing one. Completely." I paused, letting the weight of my words settle in the quiet room. "I am disinheriting Leo." David's professional composure faltered. He leaned back in his chair, his eyes wide with shock. "Arthur, my God! I need to understand what's motivating this. As your attorney, I have to ensure you're of sound mind." So I told him. I calmly recounted the entire story. The phone call on the morning of the funeral. Leo's exact words about Brenda's birthday being more important. The diary. The nearly $1 million. Brenda's vicious social media post. The confrontation in my office. As I spoke, David's expression hardened from shock to a grim understanding. He had known Eleanor well. He understood the depth of this betrayal. "I want to draw up a completely new will," I continued, my voice steady, "and a new trust. Everything. My personal assets, my company shares, the house, everything goes into an irrevocable trust." David leaned forward, all business now, scribbling notes on a legal pad. "And the beneficiary of this trust?" I said, "The Margaret Eleanor Foster Memorial Foundation." I spent the next hour laying out my vision for him. Educational scholarships for underprivileged kids from the Charleston area, funding for the very cancer research center that had tried to save Eleanor, grants for local community gardens, one of her passions. My instructions were explicit. Leo was to be named specifically in the documents as being intentionally excluded, along with any of his potential future descendants. David, fulfilling his legal duty, questioned me thoroughly. He challenged my reasoning, probed my emotional state, and asked if this was a decision made in anger. My answers were calm, rational, and detailed. I had spreadsheets. I had Eleanor's diary. I had the termination report from HR. This was not a rash decision made in grief. It was a calculated business move to protect Eleanor's legacy from the son who had desecrated it. Slowly, David's role shifted from a concerned friend to an admiring professional. "This is an ironclad plan, Arthur," he admitted, looking over my notes. "Moving the company assets into the trust protects them from any potential lawsuits Leo might try to file." "Good," I said. "I want to change the beneficiaries on all life insurance policies and retirement accounts as well, effective today." We planned every detail. The family home would be sold upon my death, with the proceeds funding the foundation. Eleanor's jewelry would be auctioned for charity. The only exception was her wedding ring, which would be buried with me. "What about Leo's childhood belongings? The things still in the house?"
"Donate them," I said without hesitation. "Goodwill. Salvation Army. I don't care. I am systematically removing him from my life." The formal signing took place before two other lawyers from the firm as legal witnesses. My signature on the documents was firm and clear. As I put the cap back on the pen, Robert looked at me. "It's done, Arthur. The documents are effective immediately. Leo is officially and completely disinherited." I felt a wave of unexpected peace wash over me. It wasn't about revenge. It was about justice. Eleanor's memory would now be a force for good in the world, not a slush fund for her entitled son. As I stood to leave, I gave one final instruction. "I want him to receive a formal notification of this change, David, by certified mail." He nodded grimly.
Consider it done. Walking out of that tall glass building and into the late afternoon sun, I felt lighter than I had in months. My transformation from a grieving father to a purposeful philanthropist was complete. The next phase of my plan was about to begin. The Davenport Country Club was the epicenter of Charleston's old guard society. It was a world of mahogany-paneled walls, crystal chandeliers, and oil paintings of stern-faced founders, a world built on tradition, reputation, and unspoken rules of conduct. I had been a member for 30 years and served as the board's treasurer for the last 15. It was a place where whispers carried more weight than lawsuits, and I was about to start a hurricane with a single whisper. A week after my meeting with David, I attended the monthly board meeting. The air was thick with the scent of leather and fresh coffee as the 12 board members made small talk before the official start. William Mays, the club's president, approached me, his hand extended, his face a picture of genuine sympathy. "Arthur, the memorial service was a beautiful tribute. Eleanor would have loved it." "Thank you for the flowers, William," I replied gratefully. Just then, Patricia, Eleanor's sister and a lifelong club member herself, joined us. Her timing was perfect. "I was looking all over for Leo at the service, Arthur," she said, her brow furrowed with concern. "I must have missed him. Where was he?" This was the moment. The entire room seemed to quiet down, the members subconsciously tuning into our conversation. I could have lied again. I could have offered another vague excuse about commitments. But I was done with lies. I was done protecting him. I looked Patricia directly in the eye, my voice clear and steady, loud enough for those nearby to hear. Leo decided not to attend his mother's funeral. A wave of shocked silence rippled through the room. Patricia's face went pale. "What do you mean he decided not to?" I let the silence hang for a beat before delivering the killing blow. "He told me that his wife Brenda's 30th birthday party was more important." You could have heard a pin drop. The disgust on the faces of William Mays, of Patricia, of the other board members was immediate and palpable. These were people who understood duty, family, and respect for the dead. In their world, what Leo had done was an unforgivable sin. It was a violation of the fundamental code of their entire society. I saw William's wife, Nancy, who was listening from the doorway, discreetly pull out her phone. I knew then that the fuse had been lit. The story would rip through the tightly knit fabric of Charleston's elite before the end of the day. It would be the topic of conversation at the bridge club, on the golf course, and over cocktails at every dinner party that weekend. Brenda's carefully crafted narrative about me being an unstable old man was about to be obliterated by the simple, ugly truth. I went home that evening, not yet aware of the social firestorm I had just unleashed. The first consequences hit Brenda the very next morning. She was attending her usual exclusive yoga class when the instructor, a woman whose family had been in Charleston for generations, quietly asked her to leave mid-session. The explanation was polite but icy. "We prefer our studio to be a place of positive family values." That same day, Leo's standing lunch invitation at the club was rescinded with a curt phone call. Their favorite table at Romano's, a popular upscale restaurant, was suddenly permanently unavailable. The social ostracism was swift and brutal. At first, they were confused. Then their confusion turned to a growing, panicked anger. The most public humiliation came that Saturday. Leo showed up for his regular golf foursome, only to have his partners make flimsy excuses and leave early. As he was walking back to the clubhouse, the golf pro, a man Leo had known for years, gently suggested that perhaps he would be more comfortable playing at a public course from now on. He walked to his car alone, the realization dawning on him. Everyone knew. Everyone knew what he had done. And in a city like Charleston, where your name is everything, he had just set his own on fire. The social exile was just the beginning. The ground was crumbling beneath their feet, but they hadn't yet fallen into the abyss. That was my job, and I was about to pull the floor out from under them completely. 2 months after the funeral, I received a certified letter from the bank. It was a formal notice that the mortgage on Leo and Brenda's house was 30 days past due. I was the guarantor on the loan, a fact that had allowed them to secure a mortgage far beyond what they could actually afford. For 8 years, I had been their financial safety net. It was time to cut the rope. I scheduled a meeting with David Harrison, the bank manager at First National, a man whose family had been bankers in Charleston for a century. His corner office overlooked the Ashley River, where shriek boats bobbed peacefully at the docks. David was nervous. The files for Leo and Brenda were spread across his desk: mortgage deeds, loan agreements, and guarantee forms that I had signed. "Arthur, thanks for coming in on such short notice," he said, his tone formal and uneasy. "As you know, Leo's mortgage is now 60 days in arrears. The past due amount is $8,400. He cleared his throat. "As the guarantor, we need you to cover the payment, as you've done a few times in the past." His assumption hung in the air. He expected me to write a check to fix my son's mess one more time. I handed him a crisp legal document prepared by my lawyer. "David," I said, my voice calm and firm, "I am formally withdrawing my guarantee on this loan. Effective immediately." The color drained from the bank manager's face. He sputtered, You can't! You've guaranteed this loan for 8 years." "You'll find everything is in order," I said, gesturing to the document. 30 days notice, exactly as stipulated in the contract. He scrambled to call the bank's legal department. I sat in silence, watching the morning traffic cross the Ashley River where Eleanor and I had walked across countless times. The disembodied voice of the bank's lawyer confirmed what David feared. My withdrawal was perfectly legal. This means we'll have to initiate foreclosure proceedings," David said, his voice a strained whisper. "I understand," I replied. "Please expedite the process." The dominoes began to fall, one by one. Brenda discovered the next one had fallen in the most public way possible, at the makeup counter at Nordstrom. Her platinum credit card, the one I also co-signed for, was declined for a simple mascara purchase.
"There must be some mistake," she snapped at the uncomfortable cashier. Her furious call to the credit card company from the middle of the store revealed the truth. "Your co-signer has withdrawn his guarantee, ma'am. The account is suspended pending payment of the full outstanding balance." Her public humiliation grew as other shoppers watched her argue into her phone. That night, they came home to a dark house. The power had been cut off. The notice on the door cited over $1,200 in unpaid bills. With Leo unemployed and his credit ruined, there were no more lifelines. Their first night by candlelight was not romantic. It was a cold, hard lesson in reality. Their desperate attempts to secure new lines of credit were rejected instantly. Their debt-to-income ratio was unsustainable without a steady job. Their lifestyle, built on my money, collapsed like a house of cards. They held a pathetic garage sale, selling off wedding gifts that had cost hundreds for $20. Brenda watched her jewelry collection disappear into the hands of strangers, while Leo sold his prized set of golf clubs to a teenager for a pittance. The final, glorious humiliation was the repossession of their BMW. It happened in broad daylight, providing ample entertainment for the entire neighborhood. Brenda screamed at the tow truck driver while neighbors peered through their windows. I drove past their house later that day, observing the chaos with a quiet, grim satisfaction. This wasn't cruelty. This was a reckoning. It was the natural and inevitable consequence of their choices. Eleanor had always taught me that actions have results. Finally, her son was learning that lesson. Folks, I want to thank you for sticking with me on this journey. It's a long and difficult story to tell. If you're still here with me, if you're invested in seeing how this ends, do me a favor and just type the number 1 in the comments below. It lets me know you're still here, and it means the world to me. Now, let's get to the final act. 6 months after I withdrew my guarantee, the day of the foreclosure auction arrived. It was a crisp autumn morning. I sat in my black sedan parked across the street from the county courthouse, watching from a distance. Their dream home, the grand 4-bedroom colonial on Maple Avenue, the one that Eleanor had helped them pick out, was about to be sold to the highest bidder on the courthouse steps. Through a pair of binoculars, I watched them arrive. They stood apart from the small crowd of real estate investors and curious onlookers. Brenda was openly weeping, her face streaked with mascara. Leo looked gaunt, a ghost of the confident man he used to be. He just stood there, staring at the ground, his hands shoved in his pockets. The auctioneer began reading the legal description of the property in a monotone drone. "We'll open the bidding at $280,000 for the property at 1247 Maple Avenue." A woman in a sharp navy blue business suit immediately raised her hand. She was confident, her expression unreadable. I watched Leo's head snap up, trying to place her. He whispered something to Brenda, who just shook her head, sobbing. The bidding climbed quickly. $300,000, $310,000. It was down to just 2 bidders, a local contractor I knew, and the mysterious woman in the suit. The contractor bid $314,000. The woman in the suit didn't hesitate. $315,000, she called out, her voice clear and strong. Just then, my lawyer, David Chen, walked up the courthouse steps and gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod to the woman. Through my binoculars, I saw the moment Leo's suspicion turned into horrified certainty. "That's Dad's lawyer," he hissed to Brenda, his voice loud enough for those nearby to hear. "That's Dad's lawyer!" Brenda's head shot up, her disbelief audible. He wouldn't. He couldn't. Leo made a desperate attempt to approach the woman, but a courthouse security guard stepped in his way, blocking him. The auction continued with mechanical efficiency as Leo's world crumbled in real time. $317,000, the woman in the navy suit announced. The contractor shook his head and stepped back. "Going once?" the auctioneer called. "Going twice." Sold for $317,000 to Mishi Holdings LLC. The crack of the gavel sealed their fate. I saw Leo's legs buckle. Brenda let out a raw, animalistic scream. "That's our house!" she shrieked, her voice echoing off the stone walls of the courthouse. I got out of my car and walked slowly across the street. My presence was all it took for Leo to understand the full scope of my 6-month strategy. The withdrawal of the guarantee, the perfectly timed foreclosure, the calculated bid designed to match the outstanding mortgage balance exactly. It was all orchestrated with the precision of a construction project. The mysterious bidder turned. It was Sarah, my loyal head of HR, acting as an agent for the newly created LLC. Leo staggered towards me, his legs trembling. His voice was a broken whisper. "How could you do this to us?" "I didn't do anything, Leo. The bank did. This is what happens when you don't pay your mortgage." Brenda launched herself towards me, her face a contorted mask of pure hatred, spitting accusations of elder abuse and mental incapacity. David Chen calmly took out his phone and began recording her hysterical tirade as security once again pulled her away from me. Her unhinged performance was the perfect evidence of her true character. 2 weeks later, the moving truck that came to their house looked pathetically small. Brenda was gone. She had finally made good on her threats, confessing to Leo that she'd been talking to a rich ex-boyfriend for months. I married into a rich family, Leo, not this.
were her parting words. Turns out your father was right about us all along. Leo spent his last night alone in the empty house. The next day, he called me from a payphone. His cell phone had been shut off. He was begging for a meeting, saying he had to talk to me face to face. After everything, after all the pain and betrayal, he was still asking for something. I agreed to meet him. One last time. I chose the meeting place, Morrison Park. It was the same park where I had taught a 5-year-old Leo how to ride his first two-wheeler. 30 years ago, he had looked at me with adoration and trust. Now, as I saw him approach the park bench where I was waiting, he looked like a stranger. He had aged 5 years and 6 months. His face was unshaven, his clothes were wrinkled, and he had lost a considerable amount of weight. The arrogant posture was gone, replaced by the defeated slump of a man who had lost everything. He sat down on the other end of the bench, not looking at me. "Dad," he started, his voice trembling, I know I messed up, big time." He launched into what was clearly a rehearsed speech. He talked about how he finally understood his mistakes, how losing everything had taught him what truly was important. He told me about his new life, a tiny studio apartment above a laundromat, a minimum wage job pumping gas at a station out on the highway.
Then he changed tactics, shifting to an appeal to my loneliness. "You must be all alone in that big house, Dad. I could help. I could be the son Mom always wanted me to be. We could fix this." I finally spoke, my voice quiet. "When is your mother's birthday, Leo?" He blinked, thrown off. "What?" "Her birthday. What's the date?" He hesitated. June 15th? Wrong. It was June 21st. "What was her favorite flower?" I asked. "Roses," he said quickly. "Red roses." Wrong again. She adored daisies. Simple, white daisies. She always said they were happy flowers. My heart, which had felt a flicker of something akin to pity, hardened again into a solid block of ice. He had never really known her. He had never paid attention. She was just Mom. A vague concept, a provider, a source of comfort and money. Not a person with favorite flowers and a birthday he should have carved on his heart. His frustration at my questions revealed his true nature. The arrogant tone crept back into his voice. "What is this? Some kind of test? This is ridiculous. Just tell me what you want me to say." Finally, the real reason for this meeting came out. "Okay, fine. Yes, I need help," he blurted out, his voice cracking with desperation. He was being evicted from his studio apartment. He needed money, just a few thousand to get back on his feet. He promised he'd pay me back. He was still seeing me as a bank. His last-ditch effort was to invoke her memory one more time. "Mom would be heartbroken to see us like this," he said, his eyes welling up with what I now knew were crocodile tears. "She always believed in second chances. I miss her too, Dad. We both loved her." For a heartbeat, I hesitated. I remembered Eleanor's boundless capacity for forgiveness. But then I remembered her diary, her secret pain. I understood that giving in now would be the ultimate betrayal of her memory. "Do you want to know what your mother really thought, Leo?" I asked, my voice cold. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a folded, photocopied page from her diary. I read her own words aloud. Quote, "I worry that Leo only loves our money. I worry that we've raised a son who is incapable of real love. What if we failed him, Arthur?" The look of shock on his face was absolute. He had no idea. "She died knowing what you really were, Leo," I said quietly. "That's why she changed her will before she passed. She left you nothing. Because she knew you'd waste it, just like you wasted our love." The mask of remorse fell away completely, revealing the ugly, snarling entitlement beneath. His voice turned venomous.
You're a senile old fool! I'll contest the will. I'll tell everyone you're mentally incompetent. His final words to me, hissed through clenched teeth, were, I hope you die alone in that big empty house. Those words didn't hurt me. They freed me. They were the final confirmation that I had done the right thing. I stood up, looked down at the stranger who was my son, and walked away without looking back, leaving him alone on the park bench. A year passed. A year of healing, of building, of finding a new kind of peace. The Margaret Eleanor Foster Memorial Foundation was thriving. We had awarded 20 full scholarships to deserving students, donated a significant sum to the Cancer Research Center in her name, and were about to break ground on a new community center. My life, once defined by my role as a husband and father, now had a new, broader purpose. I was no longer just Arthur Foster, the grieving widower. I was the steward of Eleanor's legacy. I had made new friends through my volunteer work. I even started dating a kind, gentle widow from my church named Grace. My house no longer felt empty. It felt peaceful. One Saturday morning, I stopped by a small, unassuming diner on the outskirts of town for a cup of coffee. It was a place I'd never been before. As I sat at the counter, I heard a familiar voice, though it was stripped of its usual confidence. "What can I get for you?" I looked up, and my heart stopped. It was Leo. He looked older, tired. He was thin, and his eyes had dark circles under them. He was wearing a stained white apron over a faded t-shirt. He didn't recognize me at first. Then, as he poured my coffee, his eyes met mine in the reflection of the chrome coffee urn. He froze, the pot hovering in midair. "Dad," he whispered, his face a mixture of shock and profound shame. I simply nodded. "Leo." He put the pot down, his hands trembling slightly. We sat in silence for a long moment, the sounds of the diner swirling around us. "I know saying I'm sorry isn't enough," he said finally, his voice low, not looking at me. "No," I agreed. "It's not." He finally looked up, and for the first time I saw something in his eyes that wasn't manipulation or entitlement. It was a flicker of genuine, soul-crushing regret. "I get it now," he said, his voice cracking. "It was never about the money, was it? You just wanted me to love you, not your wallet. Mom got that too, didn't she?" The admission stunned me. It was the first truly honest thing he had said to me in years. "I did what I had to do, Leo, to honor her. I don't regret any of it." "I know," he whispered, nodding. "I deserved all of it. Every last bit." He took a shaky breath. Is there any way back to what we had?" I thought about it for a long, hard moment. I thought about the little boy on the bicycle and the stranger on the park bench. "I don't know," I said honestly. "Maybe. But words are meaningless now. You'd have to prove it. With actions. It might take years. It might be impossible. That's up to you." I didn't offer him forgiveness. I didn't offer him money or a job. I offered him nothing but the weight of his own choices. I finished my coffee, left a $20 bill on the counter, and stood up to leave. As I pulled up to the curb, I saw Mr. Ramirez out front, patiently teaching his young daughter how to ride her bike, just as I had once taught Leo. Two other children were chasing a soccer ball across the green lawn, their laughter echoing in the afternoon air. The house was no longer a monument to my son's failure. It was a home filled with life and gratitude. Mr. Ramirez saw my car and gave me a wide, genuine smile and a wave. I waved back, a lump forming in my throat. This was Eleanor's true legacy. Not a fortune to be squandered, but a foundation of kindness that could change lives. Justice had been served. Love, I had learned, sometimes demands hard, painful choices. It demands that we honor the memory of those we've lost by refusing to enable the destructive behavior of those who remain. My wife's memory was finally, truly honored. I had told you my story, a story I never thought I'd have to live, let alone tell. It's been a long and painful road, and I thank you for walking it with me. Now, I want to ask you one last time. Have you ever had to make an impossible choice to stand up for what's right, even when it meant going against your own family? Have you ever had to set a hard boundary to protect your own peace or honor a loved one? If you feel comfortable, please share your experience in the comments below. Your stories matter. They help us all feel a little less alone. Thank you for listening.